And when I say we, I mean I. Zoom decided that of all the times it would play Silly Buggers, now would be the time it would play Silly Buggers. So I've got Sarah with me on the call. We have just recorded a short segment where we've discussed the rivers and housing as well. So I'm going to upload this all as a separate video just so you guys can watch that. But outside of that, the rest of the questions, so the rest of the manifesto, rest of the local issues, and your questions will be live streamed as if it was supposed to happen at 1 o'clock. So without further ado, Sarah, in your manifesto, so this is Labour's local manifesto, it states that you guys are going to have cleanup squads that will be used to punish fly tippers.
Yeah.
Now, the issue that I've seen, because I look at like Neighbourhood Watch, Mountain Wombles, Mountain Matters, etc., a lot of the time there's a lot of fly tipping, but people don't necessarily know who is doing the fly tipping. So how can you punish somebody for fly tipping if you don't know who that person is?
Yeah, I think this comes back to, that's a national pledge.
Yeah.
And that comes back to community safety teams. Now, one of the things, and this is one of the things I pick up our local Conservatives on, in their leaflets they've been handing around, they've said with the introduction of a community safety team, they've got a community safety team now. Can I just highlight, throughout the last Labour government, we had really effective community safety teams.
Yeah.
They only disappeared because of austerity. So this is about, we've got to get the justice system right. Keir Starmer hasn't said we're going to be able to just suddenly prosecute fly tippers. You have to have that infrastructure of cameras at fly tipping hotspots to catch people. I mean, one of the places I see all the time, I have to travel to Grantham a lot to look after my in-laws, and on the back lanes there, the amount of beds, bin bags, you know, and myself and my husband, both having police backgrounds, both of us have said, why haven't we got cameras up here? Why have we? These are things we used to do. We did used to have things like that. So we've got to have the resources to catch people, to then be able to enforce it. And actually the disposal, once you've caught them, you know, that's when you can use them to clean up the mess they've created. And that can be, you know, that is just another sanction. And having been in the police, people used to get things like that. They used to get attendance centre where young people used to have to go and, you know, learn about why their antisocial behaviour had caused so much distress to people. You have restorative justice. This isn't something new. This is just one particular crime that affects us all massively, but we have got to catch them. And, you know, when we've had a cut in police numbers, I know, I worked in the police, the budget was cut by 30%. I was part of that team that had to do that. You don't get the same police force when you've cut it by 30%.
No.
And then you add in the international crime that the police now have to deal with, trafficking, child exploitation, criminal exploitation of children. You know, these are all things that have been added onto the police. So, of course, neighbourhood policing and community safety isn't at the level it was before. And I'm fully behind police colleagues and the preventative work that doesn't occur anymore because it's all gone in austerity. So at a national level, there are big things we can do about that when the Labour government gets in and they're costing the police all out. You know, if Labour do get in, they're costing it as they go. But you would see much more of a focus on recruitment and retention. I'm getting a lot of feedback that a lot of people, you know, we've tried to get those 20,000 police officers that we lost during austerity back into the forces. And whilst numbers are coming in, a lot of them are choosing to leave. They leave after they've seen what it's about. They see the salary they're going to get now, the change in career progression, because the police force has changed, certainly since I left. And a lot of young people are then deciding, no, actually, this isn't for me. Or they get the police training because it's quite considerable training, and then find that actually I might go into cybersecurity because it's a better career progression for me. So retention is a big issue, and your highly experienced police officers are moving off into those highly skilled units.
Yeah.
So your frontline becomes less trained, it's less experienced. So there's a lot of sorting out to do, but I'm fully behind Keir's pledge that,
Yeah.
once we get that community safety approach sorted, yes, we should have people out there cleaning up the mess they've created in our communities.
Yeah.
I've highlighted earlier, I'm passionate about green issues. I'm passionate about our wildlife in our community, and it just blights it. We live
Yeah.
in a beautiful town, a beautiful district.
And I feel, and I know from going on runs in the countryside in the area that fly tipping does cause a massive eyesore and kind of ruins the environment in itself, doesn't it?
It does, and you don't know what's being dumped. Typically it's things like beds. I see loads of beds. I don't
Yeah.
know, and rubble and things like that. So these are things that are not beyond people to take to the tip.
No.
We have, whilst our tip personnel can be quite grumpy at times, they're grumpy because they make us all sort out what can be recycled and
Yeah.
what can't. And they do a really effective job in that. And, I can't fault them. So if I can manage to take old furniture to the local tip, then so can other people. And, and the council still do that pickup service. So you can have it picked up from your home for a small fee, can't you? And have things taken away.
See, this is the thing, like, you'll mention this to me, and unless you're at the skip, there's not necessarily things of that clear of, this can go to skip and this can go to recycling and this is your black bin. And the first I knew of this pickup service is when you've literally just mentioned it to me. So if you guys are elected, would you look to make those things more known about and more clearer?
Yeah, I think, just you doing this, I think our generation, and I mean that by me, I'm 50, I think we are not progressing with the times in the way that we need to about social media, how we advertise things, how we make people aware of things. I'm only a Facebook person. I don't do Instagram. I don't do TikTok. I don't do the platforms that I know a lot of younger members of our community would use. So there's ways that the council can explore that, I think, and push in that to try and help people recycle things or get rid of things that they're finished with, rather than dumping them on the streets and creating an eyesore. But I think that's one. I think locally, for those people that want to do it, there needs to be support. But I think when we look at some of the rural dumping that occurs, that is not somebody who's just sort of thought, oh my goodness, I can't get to the tip, because the distance getting to a local tip would be nearer than
going and dumping
that. That's unscrupulous businesses who are doing it to save the fee of disposal. So, I've had building work done at my house, and the builder had to factor in removal of rubble, removal of waste, and that was clearly put on my invoice. That's what he was paying for and what I was paying for. And that's perfectly reasonable. To keep our community safe, that's reasonable. But it's the unscrupulous businesses that might do something cheaper and then just dump it in the countryside.
Yeah. Completely understandable. So on something completely different now, empty shops. Yeah. Now, I know your guys' Twitter, because this is where I've been getting a lot of the stuff on alongside the Facebook page that you guys have. Your Twitter was whoever admins your Twitter was very fired up at with the new press article of Dot Store closing. Dot Store, for you guys who aren't aware, is a eclectic decorations furnishing shop that is located on King Street that has recently just had to announce their closure, just so you guys are aware of the business in question. And I know that the admin of your Twitter was very, very hot on this and was very fired up and very much was making a thing about the empty shops in Melton and how that's not okay. And I know that there's a mention from you guys looking to revamp these empty shops. With that in mind, what do you propose these revamps to look like?
Yeah, I think so. This is part of a bigger agenda for our town. and that pulls in, unfortunately, the stockyard and the levelling up fund.
Yep.
So levelling up, for those that are perhaps new to this and haven't seen what the government agenda was, levelling up was supposed to bring finance to communities that had fallen behind economically. So whether businesses had fallen behind, and Melton, I felt, we certainly did warrant some of that. We've lost some of our big businesses locally. Astley Storage, we've lost a number. Mars has reduced in size over recent years since I've been here. And levelling up was supposed to bring industry back to our communities. And part of that would be shops. Part of that would be, so retail would play a part in that, but also just general businesses locally, to bring good wages to our community, which when we come back to that gap for young people, that all fitted in nicely. So, the levelling up fund certainly hasn't been that. It's been a begging bowl process. And that's what Labour are really, really frustrated about, is that we've now got councils that are very short of staff because of austerity, having to enter these very quick, often ill thought out processes of begging to a central government in a bidding system, competing against each other to get small pockets of money. And our frustration, we were incredibly pleased that the town's getting all this money. We can't, that 10 million, I think it is coming into the town. Who could fault that? That's brilliant. But it's going to one location. And our concern is that the development of that location is going to lead to even more, eradication of our town. Because if we have food outlets up there, if we have drinks outlets up at Stockyard, that's going to pull even more business away from the town. And you need a mix. A town needs a mix. It needs the diversity of some things selling, some coffee shops, some food. And it's that mixture that we feel that as that Stockyard development progresses, that could really affect the town even more. And I'm really sorry for that young woman who set up that business and has only managed to keep it going for a year. I think that's really sad. And I think we've got to work with Melton Bid about what do they foresee for the town. I think we've got to ask our residents, what do you want from your town? I've seen, I'm sure as you have, Kelly, a lot of the comments from people saying we don't just want coffee shops. We don't want
Coffee shop gates, so popular that ended, if I remember correctly, Melton Times ended up doing a front page spread on coffee shop gate.
Exactly. So why? But what do the community want? This is your chance. As if I'm your councillor for Dorian, tell me, what do you want from the town? Let me work with the town on this. Personally, as a resident in the town, I would like a service, because I work Monday to Friday. So by the time I finish work, a lot of the shops in town are shut. I would love to support local businesses. I would love there to be a delivery service that picked up from a number of local shops and delivered to my home. So whereas Tesco's and Sainsbury's can do it, could we not have that for all of our shops in town? Where, I'm at work Monday to Friday, but could I order, something from Derek Jones the Butcher's? Could I order something from Boots and have it collected and delivered to me?
I know.
As a link up. I don't know. This is just, these are things we've got to look at to keep our town alive. But, if I get on the council, the development of the Stockyard will be a massive issue to me. And I feel as businesses are going in there, perhaps they should have to have a commitment to our market. Should people that are going in there as having a coffee outlet or a beer outlet or a food outlet, could we have as one of the conditions of them getting this wonderful grant that they have a stall on our local artisan markets when we have those at the weekend, or to pull that business into the town?
Because I was gonna, the artisan markets and that would be a good point. And we do obviously have the monthly vintage markets. They started at the end of last month and are carrying on all the way through now till till October, November. Shout out to Sheila and Sharon for putting those together. And I know that
Yeah.
we've got the vegan markets coming up as well. I think the first one of them is the end of April. And there are some shops I know from experience that do offer delivery service, or at least they used to during the pandemic. Icon being one. Tom's recently, he's got his website up and going, and Michael at Melton Sports would do deliveries as well. Now, I'm not sure in Michael's case if that's still going on now. Michael, you're more than welcome to clarify. So would you be looking at it more as like a universal concept, similar to that of like Deliveroo and Uber Eats?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you ask most of the residents, they want to support the town. In some way, they want to support the town. We didn't want to lose La Perla. Cost of living, I think, you know, would have affected La Perla massively, because people aren't eating out as much because they can't afford it. You know, it's become a real special treat, hasn't it, for many of us? But I think we understand online shopping is a threat to all town centres. Of course it is. But levelling up, I'm really concerned about how this money is going to be spent and what is that going to do to our town. You know, could we have had a business development centre in town? Could we have had a unit that offered people who were starting up their own business support about how to do their finances? We have a lot of local tradespeople, a lot of people that start up businesses and are really successful: plumbers, electricians, landscapers. But for young people starting up a business, could we have had a unit in the Bell Centre? We've got the Lions in there, we've got art people in there. As levelling up, could we have had a business development centre? You know, could we have supported young people and older people how to set up your own business, what you need to consider, how you need to plan? You know, that support, that where do they go? Where do they get that otherwise? That's what I thought levelling up was about. Reinvigorating a community.
Because this is what I was gonna. This was gonna lead on to my next question. With regards to the stockyards, like obviously you've made it clear, like we've got all this money. So if you had that £10 million, where would you have invested that money in, or the party in this case?
Wow, really? I get 10 million. Well, I think under the agenda of levelling up, personally, I think the stockyard, some of the events that I'm hearing are being planned and some of the development there, I can't fault. Some of it I think is fantastic. But I think our town centre, to make it much, you look at a town like Stamford still has a healthy variety of shops. So we could learn from some of these other towns that are still thriving. What do we need to do? So, and it is diversity, it is street appeal, you know, making our town centre more street appeal. So I think there's a lot could be done with that open space between, you know, the town marketplace. I think there's a lot could be done with that. But I think with how some of the money is being spent, I think while we've, you know, we're developing the theatre, I think we've really missed out on leisure services. We've missed out on swimming. Our swimming pool is in a terrible state of repair, and having decent leisure facilities for our town, especially as it grows and develops, you know, that really needed to be considered and be up there.
Yep. All right. So thank you for that. So we've done that. The swimming pool and leisure facilities, actually, that leads quite nicely into our next question. Obviously, you've said about the pool in Waterfield being, let's say, not the best in terms of aesthetics. Let's go with that. So, and you've already mentioned about the leisure facilities. So, in an ideal world, what would you guys want those leisure facilities to be like in Melton?
I would want a pool that's accessible at a cheaper rate for children. If I had a magic wand, I would have all young people under the age of 18 having a leisure pass issued to them each summer. so that in the school holidays and things, they could use 4 or 5 activities. They could go swimming,
Yeah.
they could play tennis, they could, do some form of play badminton, something, a gym access.
Yeah.
A lot of young people want to do gym access. And whilst, we don't encourage certain ages to start on weights, but actually just having access to a gym as a social thing is quite important for a lot of our young people. And so my personal wish is that there be some investment into those facilities that would offer that broad spectrum for people, but would have free access for a number of occasions for young people. That would be my wish, and I think we should be focusing on.
All right. And last little bit, as far as manifesto goes, the doctor's surgery. Now, I know there's been so many conversations by so many different people and so many different parties about this second surgery. So I guess my question is, where are you guys going to succeed where other people, one could argue, have failed or not got progress as quickly as they like, or got the progress and some people just think it's not quick enough because they want it to be quicker even though progress has been made?
Okay. Well, progress hasn't been made really, has it? So, we know there is no second surgery planned at this stage. And for me, this reflects on, we can either be like the Conservatives and pretend it's all going swimmingly, or we can face the fact that actually our national government has made the choice to run down our NHS, and that the investment at the moment is not there. And, we will be arguing that we're not going to pretend. We're not going to pretend it's all okay, because it's not okay. People phone. I phoned to get my mum an appointment on the 14th of February.
Yeah.
The first one I was offered was the 20th of March.
Yeah, that sounds about right. About a month out.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my mum had a fall and was admitted to hospital the next day because she was poorly. So, it's a domino effect. The whole process is a domino effect. If the preventative arm of our NHS, the doctor's surgery, is not funded, not supported, then we can't have the reduction in demand on the hospitals, because people end up waiting and waiting, getting worse, and being admitted to A&E.
Yeah.
So this isn't me as one Labour councillor locally cannot solve the whole problem. And I'd be very naive to come on your show and be going, oh yeah, I'm going to sort it all. But what I will not do, and I'll be a liar and I'm not a liar, what I will not do is pretend it's all going swimmingly, which is what they're doing at the moment. Labour has really clear plans about how taxation will change to fund this. We will not let our NHS fail. We all need it. The health of a nation is the wealth of a nation. So, that's a Nye Bevan quote for you. So he set up the NHS, and it's a passion of mine that people need that point of access. So for our doctor's surgery, we do need a second surgery. The town is growing exponentially. That's brilliant, because we do need additional housing. You've heard me say about it. I want that housing to be affordable. But we need these facilities. The infrastructure of our town is a tipping point, really. We've got fantastic schools, but we need more. Longfield has turned itself around amazingly. That team down there are phenomenal. I work with them daily. They're a great team. John Fernley, great school. We've got some really good facilities, and we don't want them to go to breaking point.
Birchwood as well. They've expanding. They've got their own specialist autism unit and that now.
Fantastic. So some of the facilities we've got, but they're at the level. Birchwood's full, always full. There's a waiting list for Birchwood. I know I have to hold on to some of the children as they work through that EHCP process to go into Birchwood. But with the doctors, I think we're getting to a point where, unfortunately, the doctors are being bashed by this, because the criticism of Latham House, it's not criticism of the individual doctors.
No.
They work phenomenally hard. My doctor I've had at Latham House, I think, for the full 25 years I've been here, and he's fantastic and supported me and my family through many illnesses and ups and downs, you know, and cared for both my parents in their last days of life. They were absolutely brilliant, but they're just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And that's not fair on them. That's not fair on them. And one of the things, the feedback we get from doctors, you know, when you speak to doctors, it isn't about another building, it's about doctors. So we have an issue in this country that we do not have enough doctors for what we need.
No.
Now, we could have a whole argument about Brexit and about how we lost some of our European colleagues. But one of the bigger issues is we haven't got enough university places for doctors, and that when they're trained, they work for a little bit in the NHS and then they clear off because the pay's better elsewhere. So, you know, some of the things we might look, you know, I would be considering, this isn't a Labour thing, I'd be considering actually if we subsidise your training, then perhaps you need to commit to the NHS as part of your contract for a number of years. So, you know, at the moment we steal doctors from other countries, such as I think it's Cuba's one of the ones that's really good at training doctors. We get them in and they come over here, and then we lose doctors to New Zealand and Australia. So we just haven't got enough.
No. And it's such a long training process as well, isn't it? 7
years.
7 years merely to become a junior doctor without all the additional training that you have after a junior doctor.
I mean, £14 an hour, you know, personally, I think that's shocking. I having recently my mum passed away in Leicester Royal Infirmary, but having spent days by her bedside watching how stretched those junior doctors are and the hours they work, £14 an hour is an insult. And when we can protect the top 1% of our society by giving them tax breaks and supporting their pension schemes, I think this government needs to go, and we need to be investing in what we value, and we value the doctors. It's my personal opinion. Yeah. That's way away from local things, Kerry, but it's up there.
I am sure come next autumn, if the press is anything to go by, we will be having many a conversation in depth about national issues in Melton.
Okay. Exactly. But we have to, and this is the difficulty, when you stand for a local council, you have to understand what you can do, what you can't do at a local level. But also we have to acknowledge the effect of national policies on our locality. People don't see that sometimes. You know, we can, the only thing I would blame our town council for is that they've acquiesced to everything that the national government has imposed on them. You know, they'll say we've got no money. Well, you've got no money because we've got a Conservative government who spent it elsewhere. So but it is that cascading impact.
But I would argue if you've got a majority Conservative borough council, majority Conservative county council, are they going to, and you've got, in this case, you're going to have a general election coming up, are they realistically going to be jumping up and down and going, these guys aren't giving us the money, but we want you to vote them in next general election? Like, if I was in a political party personally, that wouldn't be something I personally would be revealing, that, it's that person's fault, we've got no money, but we want you to vote that person into the next election anyway. Like, in my mind, that wouldn't make sense.
But that is one of the differences maybe with that party of mine. I would be very clear if things weren't happening, you know, as an example, if the Labour Party were in a position where we'd seen some of the activities in Downing Street, I potentially wouldn't be a member of that party if that had been accepted in that way. So I think there's and there's, if economically you think helping the top 1% of our population is where the focus should be, then own that and say why you think that's the best way to spend our money is by helping millionaires with their pensions. You know, you stand up and say why that's the case, while we're cutting, you know, we've seen the loss of Sure Start centres, We're seeing cuts all over the place. We're seeing parking fees at local level go up. We're seeing, you know, fees for everything at local level go up. But if that's because you want to help the top 1%, then you're going to have to own that.
Yeah. So that takes us now to the local issues questions. So these are the ones that all the candidates get given in advance. So I feel this is going to be a very interesting and divisive topic, not just with you, but all the candidates that I'm going to ask this question. This is the first year where voter ID has been required. So what are your thoughts of this being implemented?
Right. I don't actually understand why. When it was first muted, I did a bit of digging because I'm the sort of person, if something is coming in and I'm not aware of why it's coming in, I'd have a look at it, you know. So this isn't even a party perspective. This is very much a personal perspective on this one. So just in 2019, in the national election, there were 595 cases reported to the police. So we've got a population of 67.5 million, and there were 595 cases reported, of which 362 were in the local election and 164 in the national election. Only 33 of that 595 related to ID and what they call personalisation.
And
so
out of that 33, do you know the split between local and national, or is that 33 as a bubble?
33 as a bubble. So over those two elections that happened in 2019, what I can tell you, there were 4 convictions, of which 2 got a police caution. So if you were going to say to me, you've got 180 million to spend, which is what the Cabinet Office is saying this will cost, it's going to cost us 180 million pounds to implement this, with the return of 4 convictions and 2 police cautions. I would argue that's perhaps not an effective use of 180 million pounds.
Yeah.
Quite a, you know, a disproportionate spend. Now, then it comes down to the other issue for me, which is about democracy. We should be encouraging everyone to vote.
Yeah.
Everybody should be encouraged to vote. You know, the suffragettes fought for us women to have the opportunity to vote, and you know, it's not that long ago that you only had certain classes of society being allowed to vote. I'm a passionate believer everybody should have the right to vote. And just from the studies been done, they think 2 million people will be affected by not having the right identification. And actually, the process to get the form and to go through the alternative identification, I think is quite long-winded, and for some people they struggle with processes, they struggle with applying for things, they struggle with forms, and actually they're probably the people that are going to struggle within that 2 million that is going to be affected. You know, we've already got a downward trend of the percentage of the population that are voting. In the last general election, the voting was down 1.9%. So I think we should be encouraging people. And sorry to go on this, the one bit I'm passionate about is young people and being able to vote. So why is it OAPs are allowed to use a bus pass and young people are not? You know, why are they not allowed to use their student identification card from MV, say? We're going to have probably potentially in this election, students in year 12, it might be their first opportunity to vote, but what if they don't have a passport or driving licence? You know, what are they going to use? I just think we're affecting and marginalising probably the most vulnerable people in our community and not encouraging them to vote.
To answer your question, with those particular students, assuming they are old enough to vote, realistically, they would probably be looking at the voter authority certificate, which I've posted some information about on the page. Alternatively, you would be looking at a citizen card, which I know Totem have a push now to have a citizen card included in their student card. However, for an establishment and the students to get a Totem card, that particular school, college, or university has to be affiliated with the NUS, which I'm trying to remember if MV and Brooksby are at the top of my head.
Yeah, and again, is that going to be the priority? But you know, while this voter application form we're talking about, what if English is your second language? Has this communication gone out in different languages? What if you've got a learning difficulty? You know, where's the support for you to enable you to do that? Everybody deserves the right to vote in our country and have their say and feel represented. And I just think we're spending £180 million on something that wasn't really a major issue. I think, you know, perhaps we could help people's fuel bills a bit more rather than spend that.
So just regarding the support for people, I am literally looking on the government website now. I am going to copy that link and share it in the comment section right now. One moment. So let me just plot that in there just so that you guys that are watching the stream are aware of where we're at. So in terms of the support, the government website says in the Get Help Applying, which is right at the bottom, and this is for the voter authority form, that you can get assistance from your local electoral registration office, and that there is an easy read guide about applying for a voter authority certificate. Which,
brilliant.
Looking at that, I've just brought it up now. So for those that are looking for an easy read, the easy read has a combination of pictures and short sentences for people to refer to, and I'm actually going to also share that guide in the comments, so if you guys do have somebody that is struggling for whatever reason, they can refer to that guide as well before the deadline. So they're both in there now. So that's voter authority. Obviously we mentioned the stockyard earlier, and your opinion and the levelling up fund. So this question's basically going on the back of that. Obviously you said they've got events up there that you praise them for. I personally think they've got some really good events for. And if you take the food festivals, they bring thousands of people into the town.
They do. But one of the things I asked when they were doing the bid and when it was announced, I asked one of my Conservative colleagues, so have we actually done some surveying at those events to see how many of those people then go into town? And nothing was done about that.
Because this is
so, you know,
what I was going to...
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you're looking at doing a major investment, which £10 million is, it's major, major investment in our town, wouldn't you actually establish what the problem is and how best to spend that money?
Yeah.
So let's speak to some of the visitors. Let's ask them, do you come into town? What would you like to see from the town? None of that was done beforehand. And that comes back to this begging bowl process that we've got. And it was all done quick and we've all got to bid in, you know, so it's the process as well.
So, okay, so that answers that. What we might have to do, folks, is just take a quick break of about a minute or two, just because Zoom is moaning at me about the fact we've got less than a minute to go. So I'm going to get it to stop moaning, and then we will come back to discuss public transport, the universities and colleges in the area, and then we will be going to your questions.